everybody. Hello everyone, and welcome to today's quick video brought to you by the CICM. Today we're joined by Sean Feast, Editor of Credit Management, who'll be asking Matt Godby, Director of Godby Credit Management, some questions on the calm before the storm. So, welcome gentlemen.
Hi. Good afternoon.
Hi Matt, how's it going?
Hi, I'm very well, Sean. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Crazy times. Now it's tough times for any business at the moment out there, and there's one or two sectors that are perhaps more challenged than others. But I wonder if you could tell us, Matt, sort of what have been some of the first actions that businesses have been taking, both to protect their employees and perhaps more importantly to protect their cash flow.
Well, good to see you, Sean. Certainly, as we approach the last month of full lockdown, most of the problems that businesses have experienced thus far is very much logistical. So it'll be around replacing their staff to working from home, furloughing their staff as well, and also closing their premises and the various financial government support, seeking the information for that. So thus far, in the first month of full lockdown, it's been very much logistical rather than necessarily the cash flow side and the very things that help a business to survive.
Right. So it's been more sort of looking at people and product supply and service delivery and those sort of things. Yeah.
Yeah, very much so.
Do you think maybe then there is a little bit of a lull? There is actually the full impact hasn't been realised yet and hasn't been recognised yet?
I think it's a fair point, actually. Lots of businesses that I've spoken to over the past few weeks, when I've asked the question, how are you operating and how is your cash? Generally, most of the time they've said, well, it's okay. And I think that's perhaps somewhat the calm before the storm. I think the businesses so far have been perhaps a little bit cocooned from the full cash flow impact, simply on the basis that most businesses offer on credit terms, most offer 30-day credit terms at least. So most of the payments that they've been receiving so far have been pre full lockdown sales. So they're not seeing a great deal of effect on their bottom line and their cash flow.
Yeah. But what should, clearly that is a position that's going to change. I've seen some research recently that said 80+% of businesses are very concerned about future income and future revenue. So clearly that is a position that's going to be changing. But what practical advice can we be giving to businesses now about what they should be planning to do? And I'm thinking especially in terms of how they can be forecasting their future cash flows to give them greater visibility of what's really going on.
Well, just in terms of where we are now, businesses now are going to be hit with, in my view, the twin effects of heavily reduced cash flow, heavily reduced sales or no sales at all, and also an incredible slowdown in the payments being made by customers, because customers are going to also be squeezed. And so now we have all the sales that are becoming due post-lockdown. I think now the businesses are certainly going to feel a real sharp shock on their cash flow. In terms of what businesses need to be doing, they certainly need to be engaging with their customers with an enormous amount of urgency. And I would say all of their customer base, whether they have overdue invoices or not, because everyone's in the same boat. And customers may well be relying on you for their very livelihood. And so there's got to be very much a conversational piece here with customers. So rather than what perhaps the old arbitrary ways of credit controlling, which is a threat to place on stop or a threat to send through legal action, in many instances those options aren't even there because you're no longer supplying those customers perhaps. But also there's got to be very much a supportive element to your conversations with customers, which comes down to having experience, skills in the right places of your business, but also coming from a position of knowledge, so fully understanding the challenges your customers are going through.
Yes, and I'm figuring that on this sort of, we're all in this together a little bit. There's going to be, vulnerability has always been an issue, but I'm guessing that a lot of businesses dealing with smaller businesses, smaller suppliers, even smaller customers, they're going to be dealing with people who are vulnerable. As individuals, they are vulnerable. So I'm thinking that must be important as well in the whole knowing your customer piece.
Yeah, very much so, and certainly we saw in the news the other week that Weatherspoons was in the news because they were being particularly arbitrary with with their base. So it's very much it's very much a piece around understanding your customers fully, and that you can only do so by actually at this point in time where matters are changing daily. You can only do that by actually having conversations with your customers, having some very honest and meaningful conversations. And I would really emphasize the honest bit, because certainly when you're speaking with your customers, it's important when you find out the challenges they're facing to also be honest enough about your own challenges, about the impact on you if they don't pay you. Because I said earlier on, everyone's in the same boat. And if there's not that honesty there, then the lots of businesses are going to fail simply because they're not being open enough about the challenges that both from a supply point of view and the customer point, and a supplier and the payables point of view.
So what you seem to be saying is that conversation is important, communication is critical, transparency is important too. But to what extent can we really expect that level of understanding, perhaps from a big business to a smaller supplier?
I think that's a difficult question to answer, and it all depends. Yes, you did. Thanks very much for that one. It's a difficult question to answer. Certainly, the bigger businesses and the bigger suppliers very much have the responsibility here to the wider economy. Of course, they do, and they also have that responsibility to those smaller businesses. And I go back to what I said earlier on about Weatherspoons. They were really hauled across the coals when the news came out about how they were, treating that base, because there's going to be lots of parts of the supply chain that are going to be affected by others. So you could quite easily find yourself in financial straits because other parts of the supply chain are breaking down. So it's critically important that businesses across the whole of the supply chain are being as equally understanding as they can possibly be. Otherwise that supply chain is going to break.
Yeah. Now you and I hopefully will chat again and talk about happier times when we're coming out of this crisis and how important that's going to be. But for now, could we sort of summarize what businesses should be and must be doing now? Where do they need to focus? How can we just narrow this down and say, right, if you do nothing else, then do the following?
Absolutely crucial at the moment is cash flow. That's the lifeblood of all businesses. If you don't have cash flow, you don't survive. And at this point in time, businesses need to be having immediate, urgent and meaningful and honest conversations with their customer base. They need to be doing that right now. As I said at the outset of our conversation, all businesses now broadly that offer credit terms are going to be seeing those heavily reduced sales post-lockdown becoming due for payment. So now is going to be the squeeze in terms of cash flow across the whole supply chain. So if nothing else, Sean, all businesses need to be having meaningful conversations straight away with their customer base.
Okay, so it's very much a case of sort of keep calm, carry on, don't panic, but keep a dialogue going.
Yeah, and I would also add as well that we need to actually come out the other end of this, and we need to have a strategy to move forward, because there's going to be an inevitable recession, possibly depression. You might argue, once we're through this immediate crisis, whenever that might end, and we don't know when that might actually end. So it's also important that, notwithstanding everything I said about the urgency for businesses to get cash flow moving now and speaking to customers, they also need to be building a strategy for when they come out the other end, because there's very little point in businesses getting through this crisis if they come out the other end unprepared. So difficult as it may be, they need a strategy to be able to survive and perhaps thrive once they come out the other end of this.
Yeah, too true. Well, that's a conversation for another day, which will no doubt come very quickly. Matt, it's been great talking to you.
And to you, Sean. Good to see you again. Speak to you soon. Stay safe.
And
Thank you very much, guys. Thank you.